Have you ever lost someone and wondered if they left a message behind, something only you were meant to find? Elena Marsh was 19 when her grandfather died, and for 3 months after she stopped believing in almost everything, she stopped going to class, she stopped painting, she stopped sleeping through the night. Then one morning a letter arrived from a lawyer she'd never met, about a house she'd never heard of, hidden deep inside a frozen forest in northern Vermont. Her grandfather had kept it a secret for over 60 years. Elena drove north through the snow. No, 2 days, 3 tanks of gas. And when she finally reached the old house standing alone among the pines, she froze, because on the porch, next to an empty rocking chair, sat a cup of cinnamon tea, still warm, still steaming. The house had been empty for a decade. Her grandfather had been gone for 3 months. So who had just been sitting there? And why did the footprints in the snow lead nowhere? Elena didn't know it yet, but behind that old red door, beneath a fireplace no one had touched in years, a promise was waiting, a promise older than she was, a promise with her own name carved into it. And by the time she understood what her grandfather had really left her, everything she believed about love loss and family would change forever.
The apartment in Boston felt too big for one person, which was strange, because it had always been small. A single bedroom above a laundromat on Tremont Street. The kind of place with radiators that clanged at 3 in the morning, and a window that never quite closed all the way. But now every corner of it echoed, because Nathaniel Marsh was gone. And Nathaniel Marsh had been the only real thing in Elena's world since she was 6 years old. Her parents had died on a Tuesday. She still remembered that, the specific weekday, the way her kindergarten teacher had held her hand too tight while they waited for someone to come. She remembered thinking at 6 years old that no one was coming, except someone did. Her grandfather. Grey suit, sad eyes, smelling faintly of pipe tobacco and old books. He'd knelt down in front of her, and he hadn't said the usual things. He'd said, "Elena, I don't know how to do this, but I promise I'm going to try, every single day, until you don't need me to." And he had. For 13 years. He had. He'd braided her hair before school, even though his hands shook. He'd learned to make grilled cheese without burning it, which took him almost a year. He'd sat through recitals and parent-teacher conferences and the chicken pox and the terrible year when she was 14 and hated everyone, including him. He'd worked 2 jobs so she could go to Boston College. Elementary education. She was going to be a teacher. 2nd grade, maybe 3rd. The age when kids still believed in things. And then, one morning in September, he hadn't answered the phone. The neighbour had found him in his armchair. Books still open on his lap. A cup of cinnamon tea on the side table. Cold. 85 years old. Peaceful, they said. In his sleep, they said, as if any of that made it easier. Eleanor had gone to the funeral. She had worn a black dress that didn't fit right. She had shaken hands with people she didn't know. She had said, "Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming," until the words stopped meaning anything. And then she had gone back to Boston, and she had stopped. Just stopped. Her roommate had tried. Her professors had tried. Her advisor had left 3 voicemails before finally sending an email. Gently. That maybe Elena should take a semester off. Elena had withdrawn from the college the next day. She hadn't told anyone, because who was left to tell? 3 months went by like that. She lived on cereal and instant coffee. She slept in her clothes. Then on a Thursday in December, the letter arrived. The return address said Halloway and Finch Attorneys at Law, Burlington, Vermont. Elena had never been to Vermont in her life. She sat down on the kitchen floor because she didn't trust her legs. "Dear Miss Marsh, our firm has been retained by the estate of your late grandfather, Nathaniel R. Marsh. Please contact our office at your earliest convenience regarding a property he has bequeathed to you." Elena read it 3 times. A property. Her grandfather had lived his whole life in a 2-bedroom rental in Somerville. He'd owned exactly one thing of value, his father's pocket watch, which was now in a small velvet box in Elena's dresser. He hadn't owned property, except apparently he had. She called the number the next morning. Wendell Halloway was 70 years old if he was a day. His voice on the phone was warm, careful. The voice of a man used to delivering news that shattered people. "Miss Marsh, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your grandfather was a fine man. You knew him." A pause. "Not well, but my father did, And my father knew this call would come someday. Elena didn't know what to say to that. Miss Marsh, there's a house in northern Vermont, and there is also a letter. He asked us to give it to you in person when you were ready. A house? Yes. My grandfather owned a house in Vermont. Another pause. Longer this time. Miss Marsh, your grandfather owned this house for over 60 years. Elena stopped breathing. 60 years. She had known him for 13, every single day. And in all that time, he had never mentioned a house. Not once. 2 days later, Elena packed a duffel bag. She didn't tell anyone she was leaving. There wasn't really anyone to tell. She took her grandfather's old Ford. The engine coughed, then caught, then held. Somehow, that made her cry. She drove for 2 days. The roads got narrower. The trees got taller. The snow started somewhere around Rutland and didn't stop. By the time she reached Burlington, the sky was the colour of old pewter. Mr. Halloway met her at his office. He was exactly what his voice had suggested. Tall, stooped, kind. He gave her a manila folder with the deed, a set of keys on a leather fob, and a letter, her name on the front, in her grandfather's careful handwriting. Your grandfather wrote this 6 years ago. He revised it twice. Elena held it in her hands. Mr. Halloway. Yes. What's in the house? The lawyer looked at her for a long moment. Miss Marsh, I truly do not know. My father handled your grandfather's affairs for 50 years, and even he did not know. Elena drove north again. 2 more hours. The road narrowed to a single lane, then to gravel, then to something that was less a road and more a suggestion the trees had agreed to allow. She almost turned back 3 times, but she didn't, because her grandfather had asked her to come, and she had never told him no, not once, in 13 years. The snow was falling harder now. The forest closed in on both sides, pine trees so tall she couldn't see their tops, the kind of quiet that felt like a held breath. And then, suddenly, the trees opened, and there it was, the house. 2 stories. White clapboard gone grey with age, a steep pitched roof heavy with snow, a wraparound porch, a red door. It looked exactly like the kind of house a child would draw. Which was strange, because Elena had never seen it before in her life. Except, she had. She was certain of it. Somewhere. In a dream, maybe. She sat in the car for a long time, engine off, snow piling on the hood. Then she got out. The cold hit her like a slap. She walked toward the porch, slowly, because something was wrong. She just couldn't tell what, until she was 6 feet away. And then she saw it. On the porch, next to an old wooden rocking chair, sat a cup of cinnamon tea, white ceramic, chipped on one side. Steam rising in a thin, lazy curl into the freezing air. Steam, still rising. Elena stopped. Her breath caught in her chest, because that tea was hot. That tea had been made minutes ago, maybe less. And the house had been empty for a decade. Her grandfather had been gone for 3 months. So who? Who had just been sitting there? Elena turned, slowly, in a full circle, scanning the trees, the clearing, the snow that stretched unbroken in every direction. Nothing. No footprints, no car, no smoke from the chimney, no light in the windows, nothing, except the tea, still steaming. She walked up the porch steps, because what else was she going to do? She had driven 400 miles. She touched the cup. Warm, real, not a hallucination. Her hands started to shake. She pulled the letter from her coat pocket. She held it against her chest for a moment, like it might steady her. Then she used the key. The red door swung open. The hinges didn't even creak, because someone had oiled them, recently. Elena stepped inside. And the house. The house was warm, not just above freezing. Warm. Someone had lit a fire in the stove in the kitchen. Someone had turned on the pilot light in the old radiator. Someone had put a wool blanket over the back of the sofa. Fresh, clean, smelling faintly of cedar. Elena stood in the doorway with her duffel bag in one hand and her grandfather's letter in the other. And she said out loud to no one, "Hello?" No answer. "Hello? Is someone here?" Nothing. Just the tick of a wood stove settling. The whisper of snow against the windows. the soft groan of an old house adjusting to a body it did not recognize. Elena closed the door behind her. She didn't sleep that first night. How could she? She had checked every room 3 times, every closet, under every bed, behind every door. Nothing, not a person, not a sign of anyone. But the fire had been lit, the blanket had been folded, the tea on the porch had been hot. She had brought the cup inside. She had held it in both hands. She had smelled the cinnamon, sharp, real, fresh. Her grandfather had always drunk cinnamon tea, every night, without fail. She lay on the couch under the cedar-smelling blanket. She stared at the ceiling. She listened, but nothing happened, which somehow was worse. At 4 in the morning, she finally opened her grandfather's letter. She had been saving it, afraid that once she read it, she'd have nothing left of him. But now she needed him. My sweet Elena, if you are reading this, then I am gone, and I am so sorry. I wanted to give you more time. The house you are sitting in belonged to me, and to a man before me. It is very old, and it has a very long story. And I know that right now you are probably scared, and confused, and angry with me for keeping this from you. I understand, but I need you to trust me for just a little longer. Stay in the house. Meet the people in town. There is a woman named Addie Fairbanks who has been my friend for 50 years. Find her. She has been waiting for you. And when the time comes, when the house is ready, I need you to open the door I kept closed for my entire life. You will know which one. I know grief has convinced you that your story is over. Don't believe it. Life hides its greatest blessings in the coldest places. The greatest inheritance I can give you is not this house. It is knowing that someone believed in you. Long, long before you believed in yourself. I love you, I always will. Grandpa. Elena read the letter 3 times, and she cried. Not the desperate sobbing of the funeral. Something quieter. Something that felt like a door slowly closing on one room, and opening, just a crack, on another. She fell asleep with the letter pressed against her chest. When she woke, the sun was rising. The first thing she did was walk to the porch. The cup was gone. Someone had come and taken it, while she slept. Elena stood in her socks on the porch and stared at the empty space. She could still see the faint circle in the frost where it had sat. And then she saw the footprints. Fresh, small, adult-sized but not large, starting at the tree line, coming across the clearing, stepping up onto the porch. 2 steps, then back down again, then walking away. Toward the north side of the house. Around the corner. Elena followed them, barefoot in the snow, because she wasn't thinking. The footprints went along the side of the house, past the woodpile, past an old well. And then, beneath the largest pine tree at the edge of the property, the footprints stopped. Simply stopped, as if whoever had been walking there had vanished. Elena stood in the snow, her feet already turning red. She looked up. Nothing. No one. Except she felt, very clearly, that someone was watching her. She went inside, she locked the door, and then she laughed. A short, bitter laugh. Because what was locking a door going to do against someone who could make hot tea appear on an empty porch? The town of Hollow Pine was 6 miles down the road. Elena drove there because she needed coffee, and she needed to be around people. The bakery smelled like yeast and cinnamon. The bell above the door jingled, every head in the bakery turned. There were maybe 8 people inside, all of them older than 60. All of them stopped mid-sentence. Elena stood in the doorway, and she understood in that instant that they knew who she was, before she had even said a word. An older woman behind the counter set down the loaf she was slicing. She was small, maybe 5'2", white hair pinned up in a soft bun, wearing a flour-dusted apron over a blue cardigan. Her eyes were the color of a lake in late afternoon. She looked at Elena. She smiled, and then slowly she came around the counter. Elena Marsh. Not a question, a statement, delivered gently, like she'd been practicing it for months. Elena couldn't speak. The woman held out both hands. My name is Adelaide Fairbanks, but nobody's called me that since 1974. You call me Addie. You knew he was going to. I knew. For how long? Oh, honey, your grandfather told me you were coming a long time before you knew it yourself. Elena stood there, and she started to cry. Right there, in the middle of the bakery. Addie didn't say anything. She just stepped forward, and she put her arms around Elena, and she held on. Steady. The way a person holds on when they've been standing on that same spot for a very long time. Waiting. The whole bakery went quiet. And then, one by one, the customers went back to their pastries, because they understood, in some quiet, unspoken way, that this moment had been coming, and now it was here. And it was not for them. After a while, Addie sat Elena down at a small table by the window. She poured her a cup of coffee. She brought her a slice of banana bread. Elena ate. She hadn't eaten a real breakfast in 3 months. He said, in the letter, he said you'd been his friend for 50 years. 52, but who's counting? He never mentioned you, not once, in my entire life. Addie nodded, slowly. I know. How can you know? Because he made a promise, a long time ago, to keep this place safe, and that meant keeping it separate from everything else in his life, including you, especially you. That doesn't make any sense. Elena, I know it doesn't. Not yet, but it will. Someone was at the house last night. Addie's expression didn't change. Someone made tea on the porch, and this morning, there were footprints in the snow. That went nowhere. Addie looked at her for a long moment. Then she said softly, I know. Addie, is someone living in that house? Addie reached across the table, and she took Elena's hand. Eleanor, I promise you, on my life, no one is living in that house. No one is trying to harm you. There are things that are going to feel very strange for a little while, and I need you to trust me, just for a few days. Before Elena could answer, the bell above the door jingled again, and a man stepped inside. Tall, thin, 65 maybe, wearing a wool coat and a clerical collar. Silver hair, a face like a kind old owl. He saw Elena. He stopped. He took his hat off, and he said in a voice like distant church bells, Well, you must be Nathaniel's granddaughter. Addie half stood. Ezra, come, sit. The man crossed the room. He shook Elena's hand. His palm was dry and warm and steady. Reverend Ezra Holloway, I served the church up the road for 38 years, and I loved your grandfather like a brother. Eleanor tried to speak. You knew him too. Everyone in this town knew him, dear. Eleanor looked at Addie, then at the Reverend, then at the other customers, who were pretending very hard not to listen. Everyone. But nobody in Boston, nobody in my life, knew about any of you. Reverend Ezra sat down across from her, gently. Elena, your grandfather lived 2 lives, not because he was hiding one from the other, but because both of them mattered so much to so many people that he could not afford to let them touch. Elena drove back to the house in a fog. She kept looking in the rearview mirror. The house looked the same white clapboard, same red door. Wait, wood smoke, curling from the chimney. Elena hadn't lit a fire. She hadn't lit a fire since she'd left that morning. She got out of the car slowly. She opened the door, and the fire in the stove was burning. Cheerful. Fresh logs. Someone had been in the house while she was gone. Eleanor stood in the doorway with the keys in her hand, and she said very quietly to the empty room, Who are you? The house didn't answer. Of course it didn't answer. It was a house. She was going to leave in the morning. She had decided she was going home. Until 2 hours after sunset, the storm arrived. It came down out of the mountains like something angry. The wind screamed through the trees. Snow slammed against the windows sideways. The whole house shuddered. The lights flickered, and then they went out. Elena sat on the couch in the dark. She could see her breath. She was alone, 6 miles from town. No phone signal, no power, in a snowstorm. She was not going home tomorrow. She might not be going home at all. And then she heard it. A sound. From outside, not the wind. A soft, scratching sound, coming from the direction of the small shed behind the house. Elena froze. The sound came again. Scratch, 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 slow, deliberate. She grabbed the flashlight Addie had made her promise to keep by the couch. She grabbed her grandfather's old coat. She pulled on her boots. Because her grandfather had trusted this house for 60 years, and her grandfather had never asked her to be afraid. Elena opened the door. The wind almost knocked her sideways. She pushed through it. Around the corner of the house, the scratching was coming from the shed. She pulled the shed door open, and she froze. Because there, inside, standing in the middle of a small pile of oats, was a horse, an old grey gelding. Silver muzzle, silver mane, silver at the tips of his ears. A blanket had been thrown over his back, a bucket of water in the corner, not frozen, recent. He looked at Elena. His eyes were the colour of a river at twilight. And for a moment, for one strange, impossible moment, Elena felt like she was looking at someone she already knew. She stepped inside. She held out her hand. The horse nickered, low, soft. She touched his shoulder. Warm, alive, real. "Hey," she whispered. "Where did you come from?" The horse pressed his forehead against hers, just like that. Elena had never held a horse before. She was a city girl. But this animal, this old grey gelding, leaning his enormous silver head against her forehead, in a blizzard. She wasn't afraid. She started to cry. The horse just stood there, breathing, waiting. "Okay," she whispered. "You have to come inside. Come on." She led him out of the shed, through the snow, onto the porch, through the front door. Because what else was she going to do? She led the old grey horse into the front room. And she stood there, 19 years old, in her grandfather's coat, in a blizzard, with a horse in her living room. And she laughed, for the first time in 3 months. The horse walked calmly over to the fire, and he lay down. "I have to call you something," she said. "Silver?" He snorted. She would take that as a yes. She woke to knocking on the front door. Sharp, firm, 3 times. Silver was still lying by the fire. He lifted his head at the sound, looked at Eleanor, as if to say, "Well, you'd better see who that is." Eleanor opened the door. Addie Fairbanks was standing on the porch, bundled in a heavy wool coat. Behind her, the snow was 3 feet high. Addie held up a covered pie plate. "Warm blueberry, and I brought coffee." Addie stepped inside, stamped the snow off her boots, set the pie down, started to unwind her scarf. And then she saw the horse, lying in front of the fire. Enormous, silver, perfectly at home. Addie went absolutely still. The colour drained from her face. The mittens dropped from her hands. "No," she whispered. Elena stepped back. "Addie." "What?" Addie took a slow step forward. Her hand went to her mouth. Her eyes filled with tears. "That is not possible. Addie, it's just a horse." "Elena, listen to me. He came to the shed last night, in the storm." "Elena, no." Addie took another step towards Silver. The horse lifted his head, recognized her, nickered softly. Addie sank down onto the floor next to him, put her hand on his enormous silver forehead. "Your grandfather had this horse, all the years I knew him." "Okay, so someone in town was keeping him." "Eleanor, listen, this horse disappeared. The night your grandfather died, 3 months ago, he walked out of the barn, and he was gone. We searched. Every farmer in this county, for weeks. There was no sign of him, no tracks, no body." She wiped her face. "He just vanished." Elena sat down hard on the couch. 3 months. 3 months. Where has he been?" Addie looked up at Elena. Her eyes were full of something Elena didn't have a name for. "Eleanor, I don't know, but I know one thing." "What?" "He came back last night, to this house, in a blizzard, when you were finally here, when you were finally ready." Elena looked at the horse. The horse looked at her. And somewhere, deep beneath the floorboards of the old house, Elena thought she heard, very faintly, the sound of something shifting, something settling. The house. The house was ready. Addie stayed until noon. She did not leave Elena's side. She did not stop touching Silver's forehead. Every few minutes, she would just rest her hand on him, like she needed to keep proving to herself that he was real. Elena watched her. And Elena understood for the first time that Addie Fairbanks had lost her grandfather too. They ate the blueberry pie for breakfast, directly out of the plate, with 2 forks, because Addie said pie was medicine, and medicine did not need dishes. Eleanor laughed. Addie. Yes, honey. Something is going on in this house. Addie set her fork down, slowly. I know. You keep saying that. I know. So tell me. Addie looked at her for a long time. Then she said, Elena, I can't. Why? Because it isn't mine to tell. Whose is it? Yours? Elena sat back on the couch. Addie? Yes. How do I find it? Addie smiled. Very small, very tired, very kind. You already are. Addie left after lunch. She promised to come back the next morning. She promised the strange things Elena was seeing were not what she thought they were. Elena didn't fully believe her, but she was starting to want to. She spent the afternoon walking through every room, slowly this time, looking, really looking. The house had 4 bedrooms upstairs, small, neat, beds made, sheets fresh, as if guests had been expected. All the closets were empty except for one, which held old wool coats in graduated sizes, children's sizes, a boy's coat, a girl's coat, a very small coat, maybe for a 5-year-old. Elena closed that closet, very slowly. She went back downstairs. She walked into the front room. She stood in front of the fireplace. The fireplace where the fire had lit itself, or been lit by someone she couldn't see. She stared at it. Big, stone. Bigger than any fireplace needed to be in a house this size. And the mantel. There was a photograph on the mantel. Elena picked it up. Black and white. Faded to sepia. Curled at the corners. Her grandfather. Young, maybe 20. Standing in front of this house. He was smiling. Really smiling. He was holding the halter of a horse. A grey horse. With a silver muzzle. Eleanor's knees went soft. She sat down. Right there. On the wooden floor. She held the photograph in her lap. Silver lifted his head, looked at her. Elena looked at the photograph, looked at the horse, looked at the photograph again. That's not you. The horse blinked. That can't be you. That horse would be 70 years old. The horse laid his head back down. Elena turned the photograph over. On the back in her grandfather's handwriting, myself and old shadow. 1958. The first of the silver line. Elena stared at the words, the first of the silver line. Not the same horse. His grandfather, or his father more likely. There had been a line of grey horses in this house, for generations, bred from that first one. Old Shadow, in 1958. Silver was the last of them. Elena looked at the horse. The horse looked at her. Steady, patient, kind. You, she whispered, you come from a whole family, right here. In this house. Silver blinked slowly. That she understood. That she believed. And that was when she heard it. A sound. From beneath the floor. A soft, rhythmic sound. Not a scratch this time. Something else. Something that could almost have been. Humming. Like someone humming an old lullaby. Very softly. Very far away. Elena stood up. Her heart was pounding. Silver? Do you hear that? The horse looked at the fireplace. Not at her. At the fireplace. His ears were pricked forward. His nostrils flared once. He knew. He heard it. Elena stepped closer to the hearth, coming from below. She knelt down. She ran her hands along the stones of the fireplace. Cold, rough, old, nothing. Her hands moved lower, along the base, where the stones met the wooden floor. Nothing. She looked at Silver, where the horse got to his feet. Slowly, he walked past her, stood in front of the fireplace, and he pawed. Once, at a specific stone, third from the bottom. On the left, Elena reached out. She pressed the stone for a moment. Nothing. And then, a soft, deep, grinding sound. The whole hearth trembled. Dust fell from the mantel. The photograph slid an inch, and then, very slowly, the stones of the fireplace, the entire left side of it, began to move. It rotated, inward, revealing a doorway where no doorway had been. And behind the doorway, a staircase, narrow, wooden, curving down into darkness. Cold air rushed up, cold that smelled of earth, and old paper, and something else, something warm. Bread. It smelled like bread. Elena sat on the floor, frozen. Silver stood beside her, silent, patient. Because whatever was down there was what her grandfather had spent his life hiding. Elena's flashlight was in the kitchen. She didn't remember getting up. She was just, suddenly, in the kitchen, her hand closing on the metal handle. Her brain was screaming at her, "Do not go down there." Except her grandfather. Except her grandfather had asked her. She walked back into the front room. Silver was standing at the top of the stairs, waiting. Elena turned on the flashlight. She stepped down onto the first stair. The wood was smooth beneath her boot, worn, used. Many feet had walked here. The stairs curved. 10 steps, 15, 20. At the bottom, the staircase ended. The flashlight beam swept forward. And Elena stopped breathing. Because it was not a cellar. It was a library. An entire hidden library. Books lined every wall from floor to ceiling. Leather-bound, cloth-bound, old paperbacks, Bibles, storybooks, textbooks, journals, hundreds of them. And in the center of the room, a long wooden table. Chairs pulled up around it, as if a class had just been dismissed. Along one wall, bunks, wooden bunks, stacked 3 high. Blankets folded on each one, small blankets. Elena walked forward. Silver stayed at the top of the stairs. He couldn't come down. She swept the flashlight in slow circles. Children's drawings, pinned to the wooden beams, rows and rows. She stopped in front of the most recent one, a child's drawing of the house. A little girl standing next to it. A tall old man beside her. Both of them smiling. Below the drawing in wobbly letters, "Thank you, Mr. Nathaniel. Love, Katie. 2003. Elena stepped back. Her hand went to her mouth. Children. Children had lived here, many children, for decades. She moved slowly around the room. She found a rocking horse, faded red paint, well loved. She found a teddy bear on a small shelf, missing one eye. She found a pair of tiny leather shoes lined up neatly by the wall, as if their owner had just stepped out and would be back soon. Elena's chest hurt. At the far end of the room stood a wooden desk. On the desk, a journal, leather-bound, held closed with a strip of soft twine. On the front cover, "For whoever finds this." Elena untied the twine. Her fingers were shaking. She opened the journal. The handwriting on the first page was beautiful, steady, careful. Not her grandfather's. Winter 1945. Tonight, 3 more arrived, a boy of 9, a girl of 6. Her baby brother who cannot be more than 3 years old. They walked 11 miles in the snow. Their coats are not coats. They are sacks stitched together with fishing line. Their parents are dead. I do not know their names yet. The little one has not spoken. I have promised them they are safe here. I pray I have not lied. Elena's throat closed. She turned the page. Spring 1946. The girl of 6 is called Cora. She has begun to smile. Only when she thinks I am not looking. She is bright. She wants to read. I have started teaching her the alphabet using flour on the kitchen table. She learns faster than I can teach. Elena stopped. Cora. She had heard that name. Just yesterday. Cora Whitfield. The old woman who had come to the house, who had told her to leave. Elena's hands started to shake. She turned the pages faster. Winter 1950. We had our first Christmas with all of them together. Cora is 8 now. She read the story of the shepherds aloud by candlelight. Her voice did not tremble once. I have never had children of my own. But when I looked at her tonight, I understood, for the first time, why God bothered to make the world. Elena wiped her eyes. Summer 1948. A little one today, 15 years old. Big for her age. Her name is Marjorie. She came on foot from a mill town in New Hampshire. Her father drank. Her mother is dead. She is quick with her hands. She wants to learn to bake. Marjorie, the bakery. Marjorie's breads and such. Marjorie, bakery. Named for a child. Saved in 1948. Winter 1952. A new one today. A girl. 6 years old. Blonde hair, blue eyes. She reminds me of Cora when Cora first came. Afraid, silent, watchful. Her name is Adelaide. She says her mother left her at the church in Rutland. Her mother said she would come back. Her mother did not come back. She asked me what I am called. I told her the children call me the keeper. She thought about that for a long time. Then she asked if she could call me something else. I asked what. She said she would like to call me uncle. I said yes. Elena set the journal down. She sat on the wooden floor. Adelaide, Addie Fairbanks, who had held her in the bakery. Addie had been a child in this house, a little girl, left at a church, in 1952, rescued by a man called the Keeper. Elena picked up the journal again. She read for hours. The Keeper had a name, Jonas Ainsley. He had built this house himself between 1943 and 1944. He had built the hidden library first, and then the house on top of it. He had built it for children because in 1944, Jonas Ainsley had lost his wife to an illness, and he had also lost his infant daughter, 9 months old. And he had decided, rather than die of grief, he would take the love that had nowhere to go and he would put it somewhere. He would put it in a house. The first child had arrived on Christmas Eve, 1945. A boy, 7 years old, half frozen, no coat, no shoes, wandering the woods in the snow. The boy had been walking for 2 days. His parents had died in a fire that had taken the whole farm. The neighbours had turned him out because they had 6 children of their own, and no room, and no money. It had been a very hard winter. The boy had almost died. Jonas had found him under a spruce tree, curled into a ball, barely breathing. Jonas had carried him home. The boy's name was Nathaniel. Elena stopped reading. She could not breathe. She read the sentence again. The boy's name was Nathaniel, her grandfather. Her grandfather had been the first child. Her grandfather had almost died in the snow. When he was 7 years old, her grandfather had never told her, never, in 13 years, not one word. He had let her believe he had grown up normally, in a house, with parents, somewhere in Massachusetts. None of it had been true. He had been a foundling. He had been dying in the snow, and a stranger, a grief-shattered man in an impossible house, had saved his life. Elena bent forward over the journal, her forehead against the wood of the desk. She cried, steadily, the way a person cries when they finally understand something they should have understood a long time ago. Silver whinnied, softly, from the top of the stairs. Elena didn't lift her head. She just whispered, I know, I know. She read on. Jonas Ainsley had raised Nathaniel like his own son. He had taught him to read. He had taught him to chop wood. He had taught him to be kind. Nathaniel had grown up in the house. He had helped welcome the other children. Cora, Marjorie, Adelaide, a dozen, then 2 dozen, over the years. And then, in 1957, Jonas Ainsley had died. They tell me it is my lungs, the mines when I was young. Too much dust for too many years. I called Nathaniel to my bedside tonight. He is 19 years old now. I told him, I am dying. I asked him to promise me. The house, the children, the work. I asked him to become the keeper. He looked at me, and he said, Uncle, I am so afraid, I said. Nathaniel, the bravest people are never ready. They simply choose love over fear. He was quiet a long time. Then he said, I promise. That was the last entry in Jonas Ainsley's handwriting. Elena turned the page. The handwriting changed. She recognized it instantly. Her grandfather's, 19-year-old Nathaniel Marsh, writing his first entry as the keeper. June 1957. Uncle Jonas is gone. The children slept in my bed the night after. All 6 of them. Cora was the last one to fall asleep. She held my hand. I do not know how to do this, but I promised. Elena closed her eyes. Because She had heard those words before. She had heard them a long time ago, on the worst day of her life, from the same man, when she was 6 years old. Eleanor, I don't know how to do this, but I promise I'm going to try. Every single day, he had said the same thing to her, that he had once said to himself, in this exact house. Elena sat with that for a long time. Her grandfather had not just been a grandfather, he had been a promise a 19-year-old boy had made in a hidden library in 1957 to a dying man and to himself, a promise he had kept every single day of his life, even when he was raising her, especially when he was raising her, because she, Elena, was one of the children. She had been another child in the snow, and her grandfather, who had also once been a child in the snow, had recognized her on the worst day of her life, and he had carried her home. Elena wept for a long time, for everyone in the world who had ever been left in the snow, and prayed for someone to come. She read for 2 more hours. She read entries by her grandfather about children whose names she did not know, and a few whose names she did. Reverend Ezra Holloway, aged 4, 1959, left at a rural clinic in New Hampshire, retrieved by Nathaniel in the middle of the night. Ezra Holloway, the Reverend. He had been a child here too. Elena set the journal down. She stood. She looked up. Silver was still at the top of the stairs, waiting. And that was when she saw it. The wall. The far wall of the library. She hadn't looked at it properly before, but now, the flashlight beam caught it. There was a section of the wall. Different. Ice. A wall of ice. Frost had grown up the surface of it. Thick, ancient, untouched, and embedded. In the center of the ice wall, a door. A small wooden door, frozen shut. Elena walked toward it. There was a shelf just to the right of the ice wall. Elena pushed it aside. Behind the shelf, set into the ice, a brass keyhole. Old, green with age, and below the keyhole, a small wooden plaque. Words carved into it. Deep, old, painted once in black. Elena leaned closer. She read. Once. Then again. Not every secret is meant to be buried. But the final truth must be opened only by Elena Marsh. Elena stopped breathing. Her name, not her grandfather's, not Cora's, not Addie's, not Jonas Ainsley's. Hers. Carved into a wooden plaque. That looked older than she was. Elena backed away. Her back hit the wooden desk. She slid down it. To the floor. She sat. She stared at her name. Carved. In the wood. Of a house. Her grandfather had never told her about. Of a room. Where children had lived in secret. For decades. Elena Marsh. The final truth. Her grandfather had not left her a house. Her grandfather had left her a door. A door only she could open. A door he had spent his whole life keeping closed. For her. Elena climbed the stairs an hour later. She did not open the door. She could not. She had no key. She would come back. She would come back tomorrow. She sat on the couch. She stared at the photograph of her grandfather. Young. 20. Standing in front of this house, holding the halter of the first grey horse. Old shadow. She fell asleep with Silver breathing steadily by the fire. She dreamed of her grandfather, young, 19 years old, sitting at the wooden desk in the library, writing his first entry, afraid. She woke to the sound of the kitchen door opening. Someone was in the house. Eleanor froze under the quilt. She listened. Boots being stamped clean of snow. A kettle being filled, being set on the stove. Whoever it was. They knew where everything was. Elena crept to the top of the stairs. She looked down. The back of a woman, old, grey, straight-backed, wearing a heavy wool coat. The woman turned. Cora Whitfield. The woman from 3 days earlier. The one who had told her to leave. Eleanor froze on the stairs. Cora looked up. Their eyes met. For a long moment. Neither of them spoke. Then Cora said quietly, "Come down here, child. It is time we talked." Elena came down. Cora set 2 cups of tea on the small table by the window. Cinnamon. Elena could smell it. She sat down across from Cora. Cora Whitfield, 82 years old. Straight spine. Silver hair pinned tightly. Wool cardigan buttoned to the throat. Hands folded on the table like a woman who had spent 40 years running a school. Cora looked at her for a long time. Then Cora said, "I owe you an apology, Elena Marsh, and I owe you the truth, and I have been carrying both for a very long time." Elena did not speak. Cora took a breath. "When I told you to leave, I was being afraid." "Of what?" "Of you, and of what your being here would mean." "For who?" "For me." Elena waited. "Elena, I have known your grandfather since I was 6 years old." "I know. I found the journal." Cora blinked. "You know." "I know you were the second child, that Uncle Jonas taught you the alphabet in flower, that you smiled when you thought no one was looking." Cora's hand went to her mouth. For a moment, she could not speak. Then she said in a whisper, "I have not heard someone speak of Uncle Jonas by name in 65 years. Eleanor, not one person. He was your uncle. He was more than that. He was every parent I ever had, every teacher, every safety I ever knew. And when he died, your grandfather, 19 years old, just a boy himself, became all of those things, for me, for Adelaide, for all of us. How many? How many of you? Over the years, more than 100, some for a night, some for a month, some for a decade. Every one of them left the house alive, and every one of them was placed somewhere safe. How did no one find out? Because we did not want them to." Cora, Eleanor, do you understand what would have happened if the world had known, in 1946, in 1955, in 1970, that there was a man in the woods, not licensed, not sanctioned, hiding children, that we could have all been separated, institutionalized, sent to places that would have been worse than dying in the snow? Do you understand? Yes. The silence was the safety. The silence was the gift. You tried to send me away. Cora bowed her head. I did. Why? Because I made a promise to your grandfather 40 years ago. When he grew tired, he asked me to help him protect this house, to keep watch, until he chose the next keeper. And you did. I did. For 40 years I told this town that this house was cursed. I told them that whoever came here died. I let the rumors grow, because fear kept them away, and their staying away kept this house safe. And when Grandpa died, when your grandfather died, I did not know if you were the one. So when I saw you here, I was afraid that you would run, that you would sell the house to the wrong person, and undo everything we had spent our lives protecting. So you tried to scare me away. I did. Cora's eyes filled. Elena, forgive me. Eleanor reached across the table. She took Cora's hand. Small, old, steady. Cora let out a breath that sounded like it had been held for 80 years. I am not going to run, Cora. I know. I found my name on the wall. Cora looked up. He carved it there when you were born. I stood in that room the day he did it. He said, Cora, she has come. This is her. I know it. He was crying. He was so happy. He said, one day I will bring her here, and she will read her name, and she will understand that she was chosen from the day she took her first breath. Elena bent her head. She cried. Cora let her. And then, when Elena was quiet again, Cora reached into the pocket of her wool coat. She set something on the table. Small, cold, old, a key. Brass, green with age. Your grandfather gave it to me 3 weeks before he died. He said, Cora, when she is ready, give her the key. She will know when she is ready, and so will you. Elena picked up the key. It was heavy, heavier than a piece of brass had any right to be. She looked at Cora. Cora nodded once. Are you ready, Elena Marsh? Elena thought about her grandfather. 19 years old, making a promise in a hidden library. She thought about Jonas Ainsley, 28 years old, grief shattered, building a house because he had love that had nowhere else to go. She thought about Cora, 6 years old, learning the alphabet in flower. She thought about herself, 6 years old, sitting in a hallway, certain no one was coming, And her grandfather, kneeling down, grey suit, sad eyes. "I promise I'm going to try." Elena stood. She closed her hand around the key. "Yes," she said. "I am." She and Cora walked to the fireplace. Cora pressed the stone. The mechanism ground open. The staircase yawned wide. "I will wait for you here. It has to be you. Alone." That was his wish. Elena nodded. She went down the stairs. Alone. Silver stayed at the top with Cora, watching her go. She walked through the library, past the desk, past the drawings, past the bunks with their small blankets. She stopped in front of the ice wall. Her name was still carved into the wooden plaque. Elena raised the key. She fitted into the lock. She turned it. A soft, deep click. And then, very slowly, the ice began to crack. A fine spider web of fractures spreading outward. The door beneath it began to shift. Cold air poured out. Elena took a breath. She reached for the handle, and the door swung open. And what was behind it was not what she had expected. Not at all. It was a room. A small, ordinary room. That was the first shock. Elena had expected. She did not know what she had expected. A treasure, a body, a secret grave. Instead, a room, perhaps 10 feet by 12, wooden walls, a worn braided rug, a rocking chair, a writing table, a cot with a blanket folded neatly at the foot. The kind of room a person would live in, for a long time, if they had chosen a very quiet life. Elena stood in the doorway, because on every wall, photographs, hundreds of them, framed, unframed, some in neat rows, some pinned to the wooden slats. Photographs of children, every wall, every inch. Photographs of children who had been in this house. Elena stepped inside. The photographs began on the wall to her left with the oldest. Sepia. A boy of maybe 5, barefoot, standing on the porch, squinting in the sun. Below the photograph in careful ink, Peter. Arrived fall 1945. Placed with a country doctor's family in Burlington. Spring 1948. Became a country doctor himself. 3 children. Died 2011. Elena's throat tightened. She moved to the next. Cora. Arrived fall 1945. Stayed through adulthood. Head teacher, then Principal Hollow Pine Elementary. Still with us. Then, Marjorie. Arrived summer 1948. Trained as a baker. Opened Marjorie's Breads and Such in Hollow Pine. 1959. Still with us. The bakery. Named for a girl. Saved in 1948. Adelaide. Arrived spring 1952. Placed with the Fairbanks family Hollow Pine. Winter 1953. Trained as a nurse. Ran the county clinic for 40 years. Grandmother of 7. Still with us. Eleanor's hand went to her mouth. Addie. Her Addie. A nurse. Grandmother of 7. She had not known. She had known this woman for 3 days, and she had not known a single one of these things. Elena kept walking. Ezra. Arrived spring 1959. Pastored Hollow Pine United Church 38 years. Still with us. The Reverend. He had been 4 years old. In this house. Wendell, son of Peter. First of the second generation to know of this house. Took over his father's promise. Still with us. Elena stopped. Wendell Halloway. He was not one of the children. He was one of their children. Peter, the country doctor, had a son. That son had grown up to be a lawyer. And that son had spent his whole career quietly handling the affairs of an old man in a house in the woods, because his father had asked him to, before he died. Elena kept walking. Every photograph was a life. Every caption was a promise kept. Row after row, face after face. Some she recognized. Most she did not. Farmers, nurses, teachers, a judge, a pilot, a florist, a bookseller. Ordinary people, living ordinary lives, because, when it mattered. Someone had chosen to see them at the center of the far wall, above a small wooden shelf, was one large portrait, a painting, not a photograph. A young man, 28 maybe, standing in front of this house. Grey coat, cap in his hand, kind eyes. Below the portrait in a hand Elena had come to know, Jonas Ainsley, 1917 to 1957. The keeper, he saved my life. Twice. Twice. Once in the snow. When Nathaniel was 7. Twice. When? She did not know. She would think about it later. On the shelf beneath the portrait sat a wooden box, cedar, about the size of a Bible. Elena walked to it. She lifted the lid. Inside, a ledger, and a stack of letters tied with twine, and a single photograph. Elena picked up the photograph first. It was of her, at 3 years old, sitting on her grandfather's lap, in the kitchen of the Somerville apartment. She was covered in flour. Both of them were laughing. Elena did not remember the day. On the back of the photograph in her grandfather's hand, Elena, age 3. The day I knew. The day I knew. Elena set the photograph down. She lifted the ledger. She opened it. A list. Names. The first entry was Peter. Fall 1945. The list continued. Page after page. Each name a life. Over 100 names, every one of them alive because of this house. Elena set the ledger down. She lifted the stack of letters. The one on top said in her grandfather's handwriting, "To be read first. My sweet Elena, if you are in this room, then you have already understood most of it. You have met Addie. You have met Cora. You have found Silver." Silver, yes. Let me answer that first. Because you will have wondered, there have been 6 of them, Elena. Over the decades, 6 grey horses, all descended from the first one. Old Shadow. Uncle Jonas bought him as a colt in 1948, and everyone since has been born in the stable behind the house. Silver is the last of the line. He was born the year you were born. He is exactly your age. He has been waiting for you, his whole life. Elena had to sit down. She kept reading. I want to tell you something now, that I never told you when I was alive, because I did not want you to feel the weight of it. You were not just my granddaughter. You were the reason I could keep going, for most of my life. I carried this house. It was heavy. It was lonely. Uncle Jonas had given me a promise. But there were many years, especially before you were born, when I did not know how much longer I could hold on. I had grown tired. I had grown afraid. And then, your mother married your father, and they had you, and I held you in the hospital. In my arms, 7 pounds, 9 ounces, and you opened your eyes and looked at me, and I understood something, all at once, that every child I had ever helped save, every child in this house, every child Uncle Jonas had ever pulled out of the snow, was preparing me for you, because I had spent my life learning how to see, a child who had been lost. And when your parents died, Elena, I knew, even in that terrible moment, I knew that I would not know how to carry you. I did not save you, Elena. That is what I need you to understand. Uncle Jonas saved me, and then he taught me to save others, and then those others, their lives, their kindness, their being alive in the world, made a place for you. You are not the child of tragedy. You are the child of a chain of kindness. That began with a widowed carpenter in 1943 who chose to build a house instead of a grave. That is your inheritance. You have inherited a chain of people choosing love over fear. And now, Elena, now the chain is in your hands. You do not have to hold it. If you sell the house, if you close the door, nobody in this town will blame you. They will love you and they will let you go. But if you want to keep it, if you want to carry it, I believe you can. I have believed it since the day you were 3 years old, and I looked at you covered in flour, laughing, and I saw, not just my granddaughter, I saw the next keeper. I never told you. I never let you feel the weight of it. I let you be a child. But Elena, the truth is, you have been the keeper since the day you were born. It just took me until you were 19 to hand you the key. I love you. I always will. Grandpa. Eleanor did not move for a long time. She sat on the floor of the small room, in front of the portrait of Jonas Ainsley, holding her grandfather's letter in both hands. She did not weep. That would come later. Right now. She was still. She was still, for the first time in 3 months, since her grandfather had died. She was completely, perfectly still. She looked up at the walls. She looked at every photograph, every child, every life, every ordinary miracle. And she understood. Her grandfather had not left her a burden. He had left her a family. Over 100 people, spread across the country, grown, alive, working, loving, raising their own children because of one house and 2 men and a chain of kindness. That was hers. If she wanted it. She wanted it. She stood up, slowly. She held the letter against her chest. She walked back through the library, up the stairs, into the front room. Cora was still there, sitting in the armchair by the fire, straight-backed, waiting. Silver was lying beside her. Cora looked at Elena. She did not ask anything. She just looked. Elena walked to her. She knelt down. She put her arms around Cora Whitfield. Cora went stiff for a moment, as if she had forgotten how to be held. Then she melted, and Cora cried. She cried in a way that a person only cries when they have been holding something for 74 years, and they can finally set it down. "You are not alone anymore," Elena said, softly, into Cora's silver hair. "I know now. I know." The next morning, the whole town came. Elena had not asked them to. Addie had. Addie had left the house the day before at noon, and she had gone back to Hollow Pine, and she had knocked on doors. Every door, all morning, and every door had opened. At 10 in the morning, the road that had been empty for a decade filled with cars. Elena watched them from the porch. Wendell Halloway, the lawyer, getting out of a sedan. Reverend Ezra Holloway, stepping out of a truck, nodding to her from across the yard. Marjorie herself, 91 years old, being helped from a passenger seat by her son. Small, fierce, squinting into the light. She looked at Elena. She lifted a wrinkled hand in a small wave. Elena waved back. The people came inside. They filled the house. They spoke softly. They put their dishes on every flat surface. They took off their coats. They laid them on the beds upstairs. Nobody said much. Nobody had to. At noon, everyone gathered in the front room. Addie stepped forward. She held up a folded piece of paper. "Your grandfather wrote this. He asked me, if the day ever came that you sat in this room and these people were around you, I should read it out loud." Elena's chest went tight. "Read it." Addie opened the paper. She cleared her throat. She read, "To my family, if Addie is reading this, then Elena has come, and she has stayed, and she has found the truth. I want to thank you, every one of you, for the years you have kept the silence, for the years you have kept the promise. Uncle Jonas built this house because he could not bear the world. As it was, he built a smaller world, where the rules could be kinder, where the children could be safe. I am tired now, and I am going home, and Elena is here. She does not have to keep it. That is her choice. But whatever she chooses, I want her to know that she is not just my granddaughter. She is your granddaughter, your niece, your daughter, your sister. She belongs to all of you, as I belonged to all of you, as Uncle Jonas belonged to all of you. Please love her, as you loved me. And please, tell her the stories, because I could not. But you can. And Elena, my sweet Elena, I love you. I always will. Grandpa." Addie lowered the paper. The room was silent. Then, from the couch, Marjorie, 91 years old, lifted her head, and she looked at Elena, and she said in a voice like an old bell, "Child, come sit by me. I want to tell you about the summer of 1965, when your grandfather taught me to swim in the creek, and when he thought no one was looking, he cried, because he had never had anyone teach him to swim, and he was afraid he was doing it wrong." Elena crossed the room. She sat on the couch beside Marjorie. Marjorie took her hand. The stories began. They went on all afternoon. Voices around the fire. Hands squeezing hands. Tears. Laughter. A story about the time Nathaniel accidentally set the barn on fire in 1962. A story about the time he stayed up for 4 nights straight nursing a little girl with pneumonia. A story about the winter of 1981 when he drove 8 hours through a blizzard to bring home a boy who had run away. Elena listened. She wept. Not the way she had wept for the last 3 months. That weeping had felt like drowning. This weeping felt like breathing. For the first time, in a long time. By dusk. Most of the town had gone home. Only a few remained. Cora, Addie, Ezra, Wendell. The fire had burned low. Silver was asleep in front of it. Elena took a breath. I am going to go back to school. Addie smiled. Are you? Yes. To finish. I want to be a teacher. And after that? I do not know. I am 19. I do not have to know. Ezra chuckled softly. That is the correct answer. Eleanor looked around the room. But I am going to keep the house. Cora closed her eyes. Addie put her hand to her mouth. Wendell nodded once slowly. Ezra whispered, Thank God. I do not know how yet. I cannot take in children the way Uncle Jonas did. That world is gone. There are laws. There are agencies. And that is right. That is progress. Children should not be hidden. But there are still children who need a place. Not to hide. To breathe. To read. To be safe for an afternoon. To learn that someone believed in them. So I want to open the house, just on weekends, just to the children of Hollow Pine. A place they can come, read books, draw, learn things. Not a school, just a place. Addie was crying now. Addie, will you help me? Addie nodded. She could not speak. Elena looked at Cora. Cora, will you teach with me when I come home from Boston on weekends? Cora, who had run a school for 40 years, who had been 6 years old and learning the alphabet in flower. She looked at Eleanor. She smiled. I would be honored, child. Elena went back to school. She drove to Boston in her grandfather's Ford. She re-enrolled the day she arrived. Every Friday, she drove north. She spent the weekends at the house. She built a fire. She fed Silver. She hung new drawings from the local children on the walls of the front room. Children began to come. At first, just 3, then 5, then 8. By spring, 12. Cora came every Saturday. She taught with patience and a small, sharp humour, and the absolute conviction that any child could learn anything if you gave them long enough. Addie came every Sunday. She brought bread. She brought stories. The house came alive. Not with the desperate children of a broken century, but with the ordinary children of a small town who deserved just as much to feel that someone believed in them. Elena graduated 4 years later. She had a degree in elementary education and a job offer at Hollow Pine Elementary. She said yes. She moved home. She took over the 2nd grade classroom, which had been Cora's classroom 50 years earlier. The last time Elena saw Silver, it was a Saturday in October. The trees were beginning to turn. The maples were on fire. Silver had grown very old, even for a horse. He lay in the yard in a patch of sun by the pines, and he watched Elena move around the garden. Silver lifted his head as she walked past. Elena knelt down beside him. She put her hand on his enormous silver forehead. Hey, he nickered, softly, so softly. Are you ready? He blinked, slow, once. She sat with him for 2 hours. She talked to him about the 2nd grade, about Cora, who was slower now but still coming every Saturday, about Addie, who was teaching the kids to braid bread on Sundays. She talked to him about her grandfather. She said thank you. She said it many times. She was not sure who she was thanking. All of them, maybe. All of the men and women and horses and hidden libraries that had come before her and made her possible. At some point in the late afternoon, Silver stopped breathing. Eleanor felt the exact moment. She did not cry. She sat with him a while longer, and then she went inside and called Addie. Addie brought Ezra, and they buried him together, beneath the great pine tree at the edge of the property, where the footprints had ended, on Elena's first morning in the house. She understood now what the footprints had been. They had been Cora's, coming every week for 40 years to check that the house was safe. The tea on the porch had been Addie's that first morning, the fire in the stove. Ezra's on his walk out through the woods to check the roof for ice. The blanket. Addie's again. There had never been a ghost. There had only ever been a community of quiet people, loving a house, and a family, and a granddaughter. From the wings. Elena had cried when she understood it. And then she had laughed. Because it was she realized so much better than a ghost. Ghosts were sad. Neighbors were forever. The final scene of this story is very simple. It is Elena, at the age of 45. Standing on the porch of the house, in late December. The snow is falling. Soft, slow, everywhere. She has 2 cups in her hands. Cinnamon tea, in 2 white ceramic cups, one chipped on the side. The one that was on the porch, on her very first morning. She never got rid of it. She sets 1 cup on the small table next to the rocking chair. She keeps the other for herself. She sits down in the second rocking chair, beside the first. She rocks, slowly. A little girl comes out of the house behind her. 8 years old, dark braids, missing a front tooth. She is one of the children from town. She has been coming to the house on Saturdays for a year. Her mother works 2 jobs. Her father is not around. She likes it here. She sits on the porch step next to Elena. She looks at the 2 cups. She looks at the empty chair. She has seen Elena do this every winter evening for a year. She has never asked. Tonight, she asks, "Miss Elena." "Yes, sweetheart." "Why do you always make 2? Elena smiles. She looks at the empty chair. She looks at the snow. She looks at the little girl. "Because," she says, "love does not disappear." The little girl waits. It just learns to stay, in a different way. The little girl thinks about this for a long time. Snow falls on both of them. Then she says, small and serious, "Miss Elena, did somebody love you like that?" Elena's throat tightens. She looks at the empty chair. She sees, for the smallest fraction of a second, her grandfather. Grey suit, sad eyes. "Yes, sweetheart," she says. "Somebody loved me exactly like that." The little girl is quiet. Then she says, "Miss Elena." "Yes? I would like to love somebody like that, when I grow up." Elena wipes her face. She is not sure when she started crying. She reaches out. She puts her hand on the little girl's small, warm shoulder. "You will, sweetheart," she says. "You will." Inside the house, there is the sound of children laughing. Outside, the snow falls. The wind moves through the pines. And Elena Marsh sits on the porch of an old house, in a frozen forest, in Vermont, rocking slowly, beside a chair that is not empty. Not really. Because love does not disappear. It just learns to stay, in a different way.